What's up, guys? Toad back with you once again, right away after last night's college football show. Hopefully, you guys checked that out, got some information from that. I feel like I rushed through all my plays. I was brain farting, man. I don't know what was going on last night. I was paying attention to the crazy ending to that BYU game, and I was just all over the place mentally. I don't know what that was, but hopefully you got something out of that. And once again, those plays for college football that I had were Oklahoma +1, Maryland +7.5, Ball State, which I mentioned I was going to wait on that one a little bit. It is up to 27.5, so I think it's probably the best you're going to do on that. I doubt it hits the 28, but who knows. Ball State +27.5, and Kentucky -1.5. The market looks bad on the Oklahoma one to me. It does look like it's moving in the direction of South Carolina. The other ones look fine, but I mean, it's a situational handicap. I mean, I can talk about it briefly again because I was just totally out of my mind, brain farting. I'm going to give you one extra college football game I forgot to talk about that is a strong lean, at the very least, for some professionals. But South Carolina, one more time. I don't know what I was talking about in that game, but basically, I think they're just in a really big hangover spot, man. After coming off that huge game against Alabama, two big games in a row, really, Mississippi, Ole Miss, and then Alabama, and just the way that they lost against Alabama, blowing it right near the end, leading going into the fourth quarter, then getting a touchdown right at the end to potentially try to tie the game up, going for the tying two-point conversion, which would have sent it into overtime, and failing. I just think it puts South Carolina in a hangover spot, man. After that, you almost beat the big guys, Alabama, and like I said, they do have a bye up after this with Texas A&M up next, another ranked team after that, and Oklahoma just kind of sitting in the middle there, and this is the furthest west South Carolina is going to go this season so far, out to Norman, Oklahoma, which is a bit of a different travel spot than Kentucky and Alabama, and also Oklahoma's new to the SEC, so South Carolina's not used to having to play in Norman, man. I mean, this is something new to them, so it's an unfamiliar environment. So I think that is a little bit of an extra edge to Oklahoma as well in that one. So hopefully I got that across last night. I don't know. What's up, Doc? Starting the towers early, man. I'm going to talk about one more college football play, which is Utah. This is an interesting one. This almost made my card, actually, and I forgot to talk about this last night. I like the Utah side in this one. I mean, they're coming off two straight losses, and I mean, I think we can kind of try to explain these because Utah was in a weird position, man, because towards the end of that Baylor game, they lost their quarterback, Cam Rising, to a hand injury. And this is a guy, he's been injured repeatedly, man, throughout his career. He had a leg injury that I think happened in the bowl game last year. He came back from that. He injured his hand against Baylor. Then they were still able to beat Utah State without him because Utah State sucks. They were able to beat Oklahoma State without him. As we see, Oklahoma State sucks. I mean, last night, man, I was like, oh, man, Oklahoma State scored with too much time left. BYU gets like over a minute. I was like, BYU's going to get a touchdown here. And, of course, I was right. They did. Oklahoma State is bad as well. But throughout this entire span, like Utah's coach kept saying, at least starting with the Oklahoma State game, he kept saying Cam Rising is going to be back. He didn't come back. They won anyway. He didn't come back for Arizona either. They lost that game. They got upset. Then he did come back finally against Arizona State. But what happened? Cam Rising, he was just awful in that game, dude. He came back and he threw 3 interceptions almost immediately, and he got hurt again. Not a hand injury again this time, though. He re-injured his leg or had an additional leg injury or something. He is now out for the entire season. So I like Utah because of this, man. Because Utah, not only are they now in a bounce-back spot because they've lost 2 straight games here, but they know who their quarterback is. So there's no more, oh, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Cam Rising, we don't know. No more like question mark about that quarterback there. So I think that's going to help Utah because they know it's not him. It's going to be Isaac Wilson. He's their young quarterback there. He's not as good as Rising, but now that they know he's the guy, they're going to design that playbook around him. I think it's going to help Utah a lot. And what could help a young quarterback who might be struggling a little bit more than facing a TCU defense who is absolutely horrific. So I think Utah should be able to move the ball on offense, man. Throughout this whole time, Utah's had a really good rushing attack. I mean, Utah has been a really balanced offense, so that can help take the load off of Wilson as well. This TCU defense can't stop any offense. So I expect Utah to have a much better offensive game in this one. And I think they're just going to be totally focused now that they don't have that quarterback question there anymore. Cam Rising, like I said, he was just bad. He was still injured, basically, turned it over a bunch. I don't think that's going to happen again this time. I think their offense is going to just be able to focus. They know who the guy is now. They're going to be able to move the ball. TCU, I mean, they're just horrible, man. TCU, they're also coming off of a loss. I am aware of that. Pretty ugly. They lost to Houston, but this TCU team, they haven't beaten anybody impressive, dude. They beat Stanford, Long Island University, an FCS team, and they beat Kansas. I mean, none of those wins are looking impressive. They haven't even faced any of the absolute best teams yet. Utah is actually probably going to be the best team that they've faced so far. At the very least, it's going to be by far the best defense that they've faced so far. So I think TCU is up against it, man. And they're having to go to an unfamiliar environment because guess what? Utah is new to the Big 12, so TCU is not used to having to go play in Utah, and that's what they have to do here. Looks like a bad spot to me for TCU and a better spot for Utah to get right here. And Utah, they're a 2-loss team, man, so their hopes are not completely over yet. Like, if they can run the table the rest of the way, they might still be able to, like, maybe do something here. The Big 12, you know, we know Texas and Oklahoma are both gone. Texas being gone helps, actually. Utah, they still are not dead as far as winning this conference as well, and I believe the conference winner gets into the playoff automatically. So Utah's hopes are still alive, man, and they are still a very good team. They're probably the best defense in this entire conference still. So that's what we got going on. TCU is coming off a bye, though, and they are off a pretty embarrassing, ugly loss to Houston. So debatably, it is a game that TCU is going to also be focused, but I just don't think TCU is good enough. Utah, they're down from 7-3, but that's because of the quarterback situation. So Cam Rising gets a lot of respect in the market, but the way that he's been playing, man, with this injury, I'm not even sure that that's really a downgrade at this point for Utah, even though if he was healthy, yes, he is the way better quarterback, but I just think that you're getting a lot of line value now in Utah because of this situation. They got 62% of the cash on them, and 66% of the tickets are on the other side of TCU. The public is actually coming in on the TCU side here. Just insane. So I do like Utah. I can tell you there are professionals on the Utah side. You're probably laying like 3.5 here, but I think that's a pretty cheap price, to be honest. Charles, what's up, man? So I like Utah in that one. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that. Oh, I was going to say Cam Rising. He's already like 25, 26 years old at least. I think he's he's in his 7th year because he keeps injury redshirting, and now because he's injured again, he hasn't played enough this season. So they're talking about him redshirting again. Like, he's going to play an 8th season next year potentially for Utah. This is so insane, dude. Cam Rising, he's never going to go away. Like, he's not going to wind up in the NFL probably. He's just going to be on Utah until he's 35, 40 years old, man. Just injury redshirt every single year, man. All he's got to do is just keep getting hurt and play like 4 games each year. No. I mean, I think he wants to probably have a full season and go out on some sort of positive. I don't know, man, because last year could have been it. Utah had a good season that looked like maybe it was going to be it for him, but he got injured in the bowl game and he came back again. I don't know, man. All right, I have plays across every sport, man. I got plays in hockey and in baseball here. So let's go to baseball. Let's try to get this done. I'm going to play on the New York Yankees. I know. I hate it. I hate the Yankees. I think it's over, man. I think Cleveland, when they saved themselves from going down 0-3 with that huge win in Game 3, it looked like maybe their chances were still alive. They were going to have to win last night, and the way they lost last night, I think this is the death blow for Cleveland, man, even though I know they're at home. I know I went against a Mets team who was facing elimination and got caught. But Jack Flaherty, dude, I don't understand how. I mean, yeah, that was my one loss yesterday, the Dodgers. Jack Flaherty gave up 8 earned runs, man. That was completely unexpected. And professional handicappers had like different Jack Flaherty props. Some of them I think were on the Dodgers, and it's just like nobody expected that with his good numbers against the Mets and whatever. But I don't mind it because I don't really like Jack Flaherty. I think he's just, I don't know, he's kind of a bitch, so whatever. But I lost that game, but I don't think that's going to be the case in this game, man. Like, I know, like I was saying, Cleveland, yes, they're a home underdog. Yes, they're facing elimination, and that is obviously the type of motivated team that you kind of want, but I just think they're out of steam at this point, man. Look at what happened last night in this game. It was a back-and-forth close game. Yankees actually had a 6-2 lead going into the bottom of the 7th. Still were winning in the bottom of the 8th by 1 run. But Cleveland was able to put up 3 in the 7th, 1 in the 8th, tie the game. And then they lose in the top of the 9th, on an error, if I remember correctly. I believe it was some error on Cleveland. I think they've made multiple crucial errors in this series, man, that have affected multiple of these games. And Clace came in. I guess, I don't know if it was an error or what it was, because the runs were still earned. But Clace, this guy, dude, when the team had a lead and they put Clace in like the 8th or 9th inning during the regular season, he never surrendered the lead through the entire regular season. And now, I mean, these guys are young. I think the pressure's getting to him. I think Clace is just bad in pressure situations, dude, because it just keeps happening. He blew one of the games against Detroit in the postseason, his first blown save of the year, I think. Then he did it again in this series against the Yankees. Then last night, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I guess you want to keep rolling that guy out there because you don't want him to get it in his head, but they put him out there again, this time in a tied game, and he lost again. I mean, it's just crazy. This guy just can't perform under these like big pressure situations. I don't know what the deal is with Clace, but it just sucks. And that's just a brutal way to lose for Cleveland. I don't like it. I think it's over. It's going to be the worst possible World Series matchup. It's going to be what the Major League wants, Dodgers, Yankees. But, I mean, do people even really want to watch that? I don't even know. And Yankees, I mean, this is going to be the first time they've made the World Series since 2009, which is kind of a joke since they have so much money. The fact that they have so much money and that's how they perform, I mean, just whatever. It's a joke. But let's look at what else happened in this game. And I was going to say the box score. Both teams used a lot of their relief pitchers yesterday, but as you notice, the Yankees kind of saved some of their better relief pitchers. Weaver is going to be good to go in this game because he didn't pitch, even though I know he blew the game 2 games ago, but he's their closer. He'll be ready. A couple of their best relievers are still going to be available because they used some of their worst relievers last night, including Mark Leiter Jr. I think I got the Leiters mixed up. Mark Leiter Jr. is Mark Leiter's son, and Jake Leiter, who I think I mistakenly said that he's Mark Leiter's son. Jake Leiter is Al Leiter's son, and Mark Leiter Jr. is obviously Mark Leiter's son. Mark Leiter and Al Leiter, I believe, are brothers. I don't know what the situation is anymore at this point. But Cleveland, they used all of their best relievers last night, man. They used Gaddis, Clace. I mean, Cleveland, I think their bullpen is in worse shape here. Both of these bullpens are decent bullpens, but man, I just think it's a bad emotional spot for Cleveland here. I don't know how they get back up off the mat after that. And I think their bullpen is in the slightly worse shape just because they used more relief pitchers than the Yankees did. The Yankees used 5. Cleveland used 7, I believe, if I'm counting that right. Even though they were used for like a similar amount of pitches. I think the Yankees have the slight bullpen edge here. They have the somewhat better offense. They have more experience on their team, even though a lot of these guys have not been in the playoffs before, of course, or have not been to this level of the playoffs before. They've been in the playoffs before. This Cleveland team is really young, though, really green, so they're still the more inexperienced team. Yankees also have the better of the starting pitching matchup. This is Carlos Rodon. I played on his game earlier in the series. Decent season, 3.96 ERA, 1.22 whip. He's not one of their better starting pitchers, really, but he's good enough. I mean, he's not bad, and he pitched decently down the stretch with a 2.20 ERA in September, 34-10 strikeout walk ratio. He struggled in his first playoff game, as I had mentioned, but I think that was more of an outlier than the norm, than like a new trend or anything, because I played him in this series, and he did a lot better. So he gave up 4 earned runs in 3 2/3 in a start against Kansas City, which I think might have been his first postseason start ever. So maybe he was a little bit nervous, whatever. He got hit, gave up 7 hits, but he had a 7.0 strikeout walk ratio. So he was effective in that game in some ways. So I said, I think he's not pitching that badly. He's going to bounce back, and he did with a 6-inning, 3-hit, 1-run performance, only allowing a solo home run, 9.0 strikeout walk ratio against Cleveland. So he pitched well in that game, and over those 2 games now, he has a 16-0 strikeout walk ratio and 9 2/3 in the playoffs this season. So he's pitching pretty well, man, and he pitches well against Cleveland. So I'm gonna bank on more of the same here. We got an 83 at-bat sample size in his history against Cleveland. 19-7 strikeout walk ratio isn't that good, but all 7 walks are Jose Ramirez. No walks issued to any of these other hitters, so I think with Jose Ramirez, I mean, I don't know if he pitches around him or what, but Ramirez hasn't necessarily hit him that well, but he just has walked him a lot for whatever reason. And overall, though, he's held Cleveland to a 193 average and 569 OPS. So we're looking at pretty good stats there for Rodon against Cleveland. So I think he has the upper hand in this one. On the other side, Tanner Bibby is pitching for Cleveland. He's in his first postseason ever. He's a really young pitcher as well, younger than Rodon, I believe. 3.47 ERA, 1.12 whip on the season. Yes, he was Cleveland's ace, and Carlos Rodon is not the Yankees' ace. The Yankees' ace is Garrett Cole, obviously. This is also going to set up nicely for the Yankees if they take this game here, because that means Cole will be set up to pitch game 1 of the World Series. So, although I don't know what the pitching matchup is going to actually look like there, but the Dodgers starting rotation is really, really a problem, man. Without Kershaw and Glasnow there, I don't know what they're going to do. But back to this, Bibby. Yes, I understand he is Cleveland's ace. Really good stats on the season, like I said, but he has not done that well in the playoffs. They haven't let him go deep into these games, really. Against Detroit, he went 4 2/3 in 4 innings and was just okay in those starts with a 9-3 strikeout walk ratio. Gave up 0 and then 2 earned runs. Decent enough, but they weren't really totally unleashing him. And then the highest pressure situation possible. He faced the Yankees in this series, and he got hit. He only went 1 1/3, gave up 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. Just a lot of guys on base. The defense didn't help him either. It was just a mess for Tanner Bibby, man. And his stats are just not good against the Yankees. So this matchup, it is a big discrepancy. If you look at the matchup-specific stats, Rodon has really good stats against Cleveland, and Bibby has bad stats against the Yankees. And I know it's a smaller sample size, 27 at-bats, but 4-4 strikeout walk ratio is not good. Yankees have a 407 average off him and 1,114 OPS. Again, yes, it's a small sample size, but Tanner Bibby has really not been good against the Yankees. So that's where I'm going here. And then if you look at the splits, I know I was talking about Rodon's splits. He's better at home than on the road. That's true. Pretty significantly so. And I know he's on the road here where he has a much worse ERA, 4.69 ERA, 3.11 ERA at home. So yes, he is worse on the road, but Tanner Bibby is worse at home. So I think that kind of cancels it out. His stats here at home, he has a significantly worse home ERA, 2.76 on the road this year and 4.15 at home. So he has been way worse at home as well. So I like the Bibby side of it. And looking at the market, or excuse me, I don't like the Bibby side of it. I like the Rodon side of it here. Excuse me. I'm on the Yankees. If you look at the market, it looks to be signaling on the Yankees up from -115 to -119. 73% of the tickets and 92% of the cash on the New York Yankees here. And as far as the total, it's a little bit up from 7.5 juice to the under to 7.5 with less juice on the under, even though I see 91% of the tickets and only 55% of the cash on the over. The way this series is played out, I'm not going to be playing an under, obviously. And Bibby is so bad against the Yankees, and these bullpens are very used right now, so I would expect another over here. I mean, most of the games in this series have gone over, so I expect that to continue to be the case here, even though Rodon does have good stats against Cleveland. I don't necessarily expect him to keep Cleveland entirely off the board either, so I like the Yankees in this one, and if you forced me to lean on the total, it would be another over here, but obviously the play is the Yankees side. I think it's a mismatch in this one. Do I find this more enjoyable than betting on markets? Yes, I do. I like the sports better, Dylan. I don't know as much about the markets, although, of course, sports betting is its own market, but it's not really my thing. Thank you, Will. Zach, you're right. People don't want to watch Major League Baseball. The changes they've made don't help, dude. The pitch clock, I don't like it. The runner on second rule, I really hate, although I think that doesn't exist in the playoffs. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that runner on second rule to try to shorten the games, I just don't like it. I mean, for as long as baseball had existed, nobody was caring about the fact that games went long into extra innings. Like, it made for some of the most insane, dramatic playoff games and the most memorable games ever. So I don't think that's really that much of a complaint. Baseball was much more enjoyable during the steroid era, to be honest. When I grew up through the 90s, it was always about home run races. These guys were just jacking home runs. Some of the best pitchers were still really dominant pitchers. It was just a way better time, man. But Yankees is the play there, and then I'll talk about hockey. We'll end on the lowest note possible by talking about the worst. Well, not the worst. I like it the best, but talking about the sport that nobody actually wants to bet on is what I should say. But I like hockey myself, so I'm looking at hockey. I had a couple of extra leans potentially, but I'm not going with either of those. I have two plays that I think are the strongest two plays. They're both hockey sides, because even though I know I won on a total the other night, I'm not doing that much with hockey totals. Looking at the game, we have a full slate here. Looking at all these games here. I mean, hockey is always a full slate on Saturday. I first looked at Tampa Bay and Ottawa, and I thought Tampa Bay was in kind of a bad spot here, like a sandwich spot, but they're up from -120 to -124. They're public with 82% of tickets, but 98% of the cash. So this is the first game I looked at, and I just figured I'd talk about it because it is what kind of looks like a sandwich spot that had me leaning to the Ottawa side, but I'm not going to quite get there with the Ottawa side on this one. Tampa Bay, they are coming off a couple big wins. All of their games have been big so far. They beat Carolina to open the season, and then they had a postponed game because of the hurricane against the Carolina Hurricanes. They were up against multiple Hurricanes in that one. And I don't know when that game's going to get replayed, but beating Carolina is a big win regardless. They're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Then they had to face two of the better teams in the Western Conference, Vancouver and Vegas, and won those two. So they're undefeated enough of 3 huge wins, and now they're stepping down in class, facing the worst team they faced so far, Ottawa, which to me it looked like a sandwich because they're coming off a bunch of big wins, and they have Toronto and New Jersey up next, and both of them have been playing well to start the season as well. So this is like the weakest opponent and the team that they might potentially overlook the most in this part of the schedule, but I hesitate because they are starting a road trip here, and usually you are focused because you want to get that road trip off right, although they could look past Ottawa still because Toronto's a much bigger opponent up on deck. And I know Tampa Bay and Toronto have had some of those clashes recently. They played in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and Toronto beat them. So I don't know about that. But the other problem with Ottawa is the goaltender situation here. I'm looking at starting goalies. Actually, it's dailyfaceoff.com. I thought it was startinggoalies.com. Looks like Vasilevsky is likely to play. You see all these unconfirmed, though, so a lot of these goalies haven't been confirmed, but this site puts up who they think is the likely starter based on the team's starting goalie patterns and how they alternate them. So it looks like Vasilevsky's probably in net again. I mean, he's obviously the best goalie for Tampa, and he plays most of their games. He's really good, obviously, and it looks like Forsberg is the predicted starter for Ottawa. So that's the situation. The thing about Ottawa, I would be more inclined to play Ottawa if Ullmark was going to be in net here. Former Bruin, my guy Ullmark, he hasn't played in the last 2 games because he's injured. So I think they gave him an actual rest game against LA, but he is also injured. So maybe, I don't know if he was going to play in that game or not, but he is their top goalie. I mean, that's why they went out and got Ullmark, but he is injured, and it seems like he did practice yesterday, so there is a chance he plays, but starting goalies is kind of leaning towards him not playing, and they're saying it's going to be Forsberg for a second straight game. So I don't know. They have 3 different goalies, it looks like, with Sogard also getting in the mix there. But Ottawa, they're going to probably be in a better situation if Ullmark plays. I know he had 1 bad game against Montreal, but that was kind of a letdown spot off of a huge win over Florida. So I don't put much stock into that. Ullmark is still their best goalie. So we'll see what happens in that game, but not a play for me. But I thought that it looked sandwich-y as far as the situation that Tampa is in. Edmonton, Dallas, I will just point out, Dallas is down from -125 to -107. 70% of the tickets on public coming in on Dallas, but 74% of the cash over on the other side in Edmonton. It surprises me the public's coming in on Dallas, except Dallas has obviously been the team that's been playing way better this season. But I don't know if I agree with this market interpretation here, where the market looks like it's pros versus Joes, heavily public on Dallas, and the cash is over on the other side in Edmonton. Most of it does. I first looked at this and I kind of was leaning to the Edmonton side because we see the teams kind of going in opposite directions a little bit. Like Dallas, basically, they started off the season winning every game, but of course, they didn't beat anybody that impressive, really. The most impressive win was this road win against Nashville. Nashville is way better than the record looks, in my opinion, right now. And then they face a second road game, and they actually lost to Washington. So that could kind of halt their winning momentum a little bit, but maybe they were looking ahead to Edmonton. Edmonton is a big game, and of course, it is a big game for Dallas because it's revenge. This is Western Conference revenge for last year, man. Edmonton was the team that eliminated Dallas in the conference finals last year to get to the Stanley Cup finals. So I think that is a big motivator for Dallas here. So I'm not going to play against Dallas in a spot where they have a big revenge motive here. But other than that, it does actually look like, if there wasn't that huge revenge factor, it does look like this loss, having broken Dallas's winning momentum, could kind of stall out their momentum a little bit, whereas Edmonton on the other side looked worse than they actually are. So Dallas looks a little bit better than maybe they actually are to start the season, whereas Edmonton looked a little bit worse than maybe they are to start the season. I mean, they played some tougher opponents. Winnipeg does look really good so far to start the season, so that was not an easy game really for them. And then they finally started winning. After they lost the first 3 games, they finally turned it on and started winning. So as far as the momentum is concerned, yeah, these teams kind of look like they're slightly going in opposite directions. So that would be what the market is kind of indicating on there, that trend would continue. But again, I'm not going to play against Dallas when they have this major revenge motivation here. So I'm not going to do it. Florida-Vegas is just interesting because this is a rematch of the Stanley Cup Finals from 2 years ago where Vegas beat Florida, but of course Florida won last year. So I believe Florida beat Vegas both games during the regular season as well. So Vegas is probably going to be motivated in this game. Both teams are probably going to show up in this game. Florida up from -106 to -118. They're public, 67% of the tickets, 56% of the cash on them. So, as far as the line, as far as the market is concerned, yeah, the line has moved up on Florida, but the cash percentage looks like it's kind of indicating against Florida. This is just going to be a pretty interesting game, a pretty good game regardless. Florida's coming off a game where they didn't really play particularly well in a return home spot against Vancouver, although it was with Bobrovsky back in net. I won on that game because it was a return home spot. Hint, hint. I might be talking about some of those teams in a second. So it was a bad spot for Florida, but now they're in a second game. When a team returns home from a road trip and they don't do well in that return home because it is like a distracted spot and you have to get back to home life and whatever, losing that game tends to refocus that team coming into the next game. So that does make it a positive spot for Florida in that way. But Vegas, they also may have been looking ahead to this Florida game, and maybe that's why they got caught against Tampa Bay. Maybe they got caught against Washington looking ahead to both these games. I don't know. But I think Vegas is probably going to show up focused in this game as well. They also don't want to go 0-3 on this road trip, man, and they have a break after this, so I think they're going to go full force to try to win this game against Florida. So I don't know what else I have to say about that, but that was just interesting as well. And I will talk briefly. I don't want to cover every one of these games, but Utah is also in a spot where they're returning home from a road trip, and my Boston Bruins get the benefit of this. So Utah, everybody was like, oh my God, Utah, like this new Utah team, they're so good. They're 3-0. And I mean, yeah, and they had one big win against the Rangers. I mean, the Islanders in Chicago, less impressive winning those, but beating the Rangers, definitely impressive. But since then, they have not won. I mean, they had a couple of difficult spots after that. It was kind of a letdown spot, as I pointed out, against New Jersey off of just a huge overtime win over the Rangers. So they did not play well following that up. And then they brought Ingram back in net. Ingram is their better of the two goalies over Vejmelka. He came back in net, but this was a difficult spot, having to travel out to the Pacific Coast from the East Coast with only one day off. I pointed that out. I thought it was a bad spot. I nailed that game. I was right about the Anaheim side and the over in that game. Should have been betting it, probably. So Utah didn't do well in that game either. Now I actually think they're in a bad spot again because they're returning home from this ridiculous road trip, going all over the place. East Coast, then for one game on the Pacific Coast for whatever reason. Now they're returning home. But the one thing that gives me pause on this, and I don't want to play the Bruins, is that they have extra days. Utah has extra days off. So I think I talk about this in some of these other sports like baseball, where when a team returns home and they don't have any days off, it actually is less bad than when they have a day off because that day off puts them back in like home mode and whatever. But I think if you have these extra days off, I think it can kind of start helping you again, like because you get to put that like home life stuff out of the way, and then you can actually start focusing on the game again. So I'm not sure that this extra break is going to hurt, especially when Utah lost a couple of these games. They'll be able to rest here. They'll probably have Ingram and net again, I would assume, in this game. I don't know if it says here, but it looks like he is. It's going to be Ingram, Swayman, so both teams' best goalies probably in net in this game. What was I even looking at here? Yeah, this schedule here. And they don't have anything to overlook. They don't have anything to look forward to. And Boston's their biggest opponent. So I don't think Utah's necessarily going to be unfocused here. It's the Boston Bruins coming into their house. They're a big opponent. Up next, they just have Ottawa, and it's 3 days from now. So probably not going to be unfocused looking at that one. So I would just stay away from this one. The Bruins, they're out. They've started the road trip. They beat Colorado. Pretty big win, although I don't know what's going on with Colorado playing so poorly recently. But Bruins now off to the right start on the road trip, getting used to being in high elevation. So they're going to have back-to-back games in high elevation, which can be difficult. But on the other hand, they got used to it because they played in Colorado. So I don't know. But I can tell you the market is against the Bruins here. They're heavily public with 82% of the tickets on them. The public is no longer on the Utah Hockey Club after that 3-0 start. They're looking like the Arizona Coyotes again. Bruins down from -124 to -119. 82% of the tickets on them, but 73% of the cash over on the other side on Utah. So the market looks like it is pretty strongly indicating on the Utah side. Unfortunately, for my Boston Bruins, it may be a spot where they're not going to be able to win this game. JC, what's up, brother? Let's get to my plays, and then I'll get out of here. The Vancouver Canucks is going to be my first play. Both of these look like these are ticket versus cash disparities in the market as well. So I'm going to be on Vancouver. They're up from -140 to -144. They got 95% of the cash on them. 71% of the tickets over on the other side in Philadelphia. So the public seems to be coming in on this home underdog Philadelphia team. But the odds makers, they're giving Vancouver a lot of respect here. And I think maybe it's warranted because they're telling you that Vancouver is a significantly better team in this game here. Even though you look at what these teams have done so far this season, the records don't really indicate that. Vancouver, they are also coming off a big win. So are they going to be in a letdown spot off of beating the returning champs? I don't think so because they have days off after this, and then they just have to face Chicago, so they don't have anything to look ahead to. But look at who they're playing, man. Philadelphia, you think, well, what's the big deal about that? The big deal is they just played Philadelphia 3 games ago at home, and Philadelphia beat them in this game. So this is a little bit of quick road reversal revenge. So I think that is going to keep Vancouver focused in this game, even though they are off a big win over Florida. So my first look at this was like, oh, Vancouver's going to be in a letdown spot. But I don't actually think so. And this game, I mean, it was a close game. What else can you say about this? Statistically, I think it was pretty close. Vancouver was the more physical team. Philadelphia outshot them a little bit. Vancouver won the face-off percentage. So I also do like taking the more physical team, and I think that is what you're getting with Vancouver here. This game was just pretty close the whole way, man. And Vancouver never trailed in regulation in this game. They lost in a shootout, but they had the 1-goal lead multiple times in the game and wound up losing the game. So a game they also easily could have won. And debatably, they played better than Philadelphia did in that game. So I think Vancouver may be getting overlooked here. And I think they're the team that may have a little bit of extra motivation just because they did beat, or just because Philadelphia did beat them on their own ice already. So Vancouver is going to want to beat them, man. Like when you're a team and you're facing a team that just beat you on your own ice, and you're playing them again on their ice, you want to return the favor, man. You are going to be focused for that reason. And then looking at Philadelphia, yeah, I know they've lost 3 in a row, so you might say, well, they're going to be in a bounce-back spot, right? But the only team they've beaten so far is Vancouver, by the way. And this Philadelphia team may just not be that good. Although these teams that they've faced, Calgary, Edmonton, Seattle, they're not exactly the bottom of the barrel. But they're returning home from a road trip, man. It was a difficult road trip. So I think the public sentiment might be, oh, well, Philadelphia beat Vancouver at Vancouver. Now they're at home against Vancouver. They're home now from the road trip, so they should bounce back from these losses, right? No, I look the other way in that situation like this. I think it's that road revenge spot for Vancouver. Philadelphia returning home from a road trip. I always say, man, it's not a good spot when you return home from a road trip. You tend to be a little bit distracted because you're having to return to home life. And this was a significant road trip, man. I know this is actually Philadelphia's home opener this late into the season, so is that going to be like a bigger celebration and motivate them? Maybe, but it's not a great spot to have a home opener, man. You started out up in the Pacific Northwest, basically, and then you played all these games, and now you have to return from home from that across multiple time zones. It just doesn't look like a great spot to me, man, even though I know Vancouver, not a bad team, and it's not a team you're necessarily going to overlook, but if you're going to tend to overlook a Vancouver team in any spot at all, won't it be in a situation where you did beat them at their place already? I think maybe. So I think it's a bad spot for Philadelphia. I like Vancouver here. Philadelphia's going with Urson in net probably because they've been alternating goalies here, but neither of their goalies have been good, man. Urson or Fedotov, I'm not really sure it even matters. Neither goalie is very good for them. And Vancouver, they do have the goaltender edge in this game if they are going with Lankinen, although I'm not sure if they are because they've been alternating goalies as well, but Lankinen is better than Silovs. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I actually don't know. Hopefully it's not Silovs. It looks like, Lankinen looks like he is the predicted starter at the very least for Vancouver, according to Daily Faceoff here. And I don't know if that's actually going to be the case. I mean, it's possible they get it wrong. This game's not until tonight, but it looks like it probably will be Lankinen just because he has played better. So even though they have been alternating goalies, I think they may have Lankinen out there again, especially because they're going to get rest after this. So I don't think they mind playing him 2 games in 3 days in a spot like this where they're going to have rest after this. And they may even rest him in the game against Chicago if they go that way. So I'll go with Vancouver in that one. And the market does look like it's strongly indicating on it. And then last play before I get out of here is the St. Louis Blues as a home underdog at plus 135. We're getting a decent price here on the St. Louis Blues, man. Even though the odds makers, they're telling you the Carolina Hurricanes are the better team, and I don't disagree with that. Carolina's obviously the better team. But in a spot like this, I think it's a spot to fade Carolina. Carolina's up from minus 140 to minus 145. 74% of the tickets on them. 52% of the cash, however, coming in on the other side on St. Louis. So again, we have a ticket cash disparity in this game, and I think I agree with it in this one. Carolina's on a back-to-back, man. They're one of the only teams that's on a back-to-back here. I think basically all the other teams that played yesterday get the benefit of having today off, even though it's mostly usually a full slate and Saturday. There are usually a few teams that are off. Carolina, I think, is the only team that's not off coming into this game. So they're in a scheduling spot where they're playing a back-to-back, which is not the easiest thing to do, and it's 2 straight road games. They did have a couple days off before that, so they're not playing like a third game in 4 days, but it is still a back-to-back, and they did have a couple days off prior to that, so it's whatever. It's a third game in 5 days, I guess, which isn't that great anyway. They beat New Jersey to finally get a win on the season after they had that Tampa Bay game postponed because of the hurricane. So they haven't played that many games, that's true. But they did just play a pretty big game at Pittsburgh, man, and they were able to beat Pittsburgh 4-1. That's a big win. Now they have to go from Pittsburgh out to St. Louis. And up next, even though they do have a couple days off, they have Edmonton up next. So this looks like kind of a sandwich spot, man. I mean, Pittsburgh's one of the decent teams, at least in their own conference. St. Louis has not really been that impressive recently, and they're in the Western Conference. And Edmonton, of course, is the Western Conference champion from last year. So they might draw Carolina's focus a little bit, especially that was a potential Stanley Cup final matchup from last year. If Carolina had been able to beat Florida, that would have been the matchup. They would have been able to play Edmonton. So Carolina might be looking ahead to that game a little bit and may overlook St. Louis a little bit, especially in a back-to-back like this. In this game against Pittsburgh, Carolina did score a couple of goals on the power play, so maybe the final score was a little bit misleading. I mean, Carolina did outplay them, though. They did outshoot them. Pittsburgh did outface off them and was out-physicaling Carolina, which is weird because Carolina's usually the better defensive physical team. So weird to see Pittsburgh out-hit them by that much. But still, I mean, it was kind of a physical game either way you look at it, and pretty big win, decent win there. So I think Carolina is not going to be in the greatest spot coming off of that. And I think Anderson is probably getting rested in this game again. They've alternated so far, but in a back-to-back, even though I think Anderson's probably going to play a majority of their games because he is their better goalie, I think that it's not going to be him. I think it is going to be Kochetkov for them today. It looks like he is slated, at least, as their starter in this one. Kochetkov isn't that bad, though. They do have a pretty good goaltender tandem, so neither of their goalies are that bad. But Anderson is the better of the two goalies, so Kochetkov just a little bit worse. Not really a huge downgrade, but still, I mean, it is a factor. And it looks like St. Louis is scheduled to play their basically everyday starter in Binnington there, so he's probably going to be in net as usual. And he is their better goalie, although he hasn't been good really this year so far. And he has they haven't played him in a couple of games, so they've rested him. they rested him against a couple of the weaker opponents, basically San Jose and the Islanders. They put Hofer in there, Hoffer. But Binnington, he's definitely going to be back in net after that, I would assume, because he didn't play in the last game. So it will be him again. He hasn't been that great so far. He's been the goalie in their 2 losses so far, but it was against Vegas and Minnesota. I mean, not exactly the easiest games. So I kind of expect him to put together a better performance in this one. I think they're in a bit of a better spot just because they are staying at home. They had yesterday off, and they're not coming off really a huge game, but they are coming off a game where they may start some new winning momentum. So I think that's actually a positive that they beat the Islanders because it will break that loss streak that they were on. So I actually like that aspect of it as well. So I'm going to be on the St. Louis Blues, fading Carolina in the back-to-back, and that's going to do it for me, man. These plays, I'm all over it, man. I have so many plays today. 7 plays in college football: Oklahoma +1, Maryland +7.5, Ball State +27.5, Kentucky -1.5, Major League Baseball, Yankees -118, hockey, Vancouver -114, and St. Louis +135. Those are all my plays today. 7 plays across the 3 sports. We're in that part of October, man, where the schedule starts getting jam-packed, and it would be even more so if we had NBA to look at here. Thanks. Let's get physical, baby. Mr. Lex, what's up, guys? It's going to get oily. I gave you my Bruins rundown, Charles. Hopefully you gained something from that as well. But I am a fan, so I only have rooting interest in the Bruins tonight. So let's go Bruins. It could be a fun game to watch. Utah hasn't been they've been a pretty fun team to watch so far. Go back and watch it, Charles. I don't want to reiterate myself. I got to get out of here. I got things to do. Sunday brunch with my mom today, as usual. So it's pretty gay, I know. Very homosexual of me to do that. It's a very fun white woman time. So let's get it done, baby. Let's get some wins today. When you have so many plays on one day, it can go really bad or really good. I mean, of course, it could just be a game where you go 4-3 or something, a day like that, and it's just ho-hum. But it does have the potential to be a really good day or a really bad day as well. And let's hope we avoid the really bad day. Let's get it. Have a good one, man. Peace out. Thanks for hanging out. Tower Gang Toad, of course, and follow the Tower Gang podcast as usual. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. Throw us some support there. You get extra content and get some Cougars at brunch. They kind of like me, man. What can I say? I'm going Reed Coverdale on that one. And the MILFs, at the very least, do like me. And I like them. I don't know what else I was going to say. Bohemian Grove. I think there are tickets still available for the end of the week. Go hang out with us in Florida. You get live Tower Gang podcasts and live, of course, Nephilim Death Squad, Revenge of the Sith, bunch of other podcasts. Comedy. There'll be stand-up comedy with Leonardo Joni, Mark Random, Adam Nutter, potentially. I don't know who else is going to be there, but it's going to be a weird time. It's going to be a fun time, man. Just come hang out. Peace out.